My name is Elena Cross, and for most of my life, I believed that hard work and loyalty could earn anyone success. I was wrong. Sometimes life rewards liars, cheaters, and manipulators first until someone decides to flip the script. For 8 years, I was the executive assistant to Richard Vaughn, CEO of one of the largest financial firms in New York. I knew every corner of that company, every strategy, every client, every secret. I was the quiet one in the office who kept things running, who made everyone else look competent. People used to joke that the firm would collapse if I ever left. But back then, I had no plans of leaving. I thought loyalty mattered. That was before I learned that loyalty means nothing to men like Richard, men who think power makes them untouchable. It started innocently enough. A new marketing consultant joined the company, Sabrina Holt. She was charming, ambitious, and the kind of woman who could make people do anything just by flashing a smile. Within weeks, Richard was spending every spare minute in her office. Meetings went longer. Dinners for strategy became more frequent. Everyone knew what was going on. I kept my head down. I wasn't the kind to gossip. But the tension started affecting work. She'd send me requests at midnight demanding reports I'd already sent hours earlier, claiming she couldn't find them. She'd accidentally delete key documents, then tell Richard I hadn't followed through. Slowly, subtly, she began rewriting history, painting me as unreliable. I confronted her once in the break room, asking her what her issue was. She smiled, sipped her coffee, and said, "You're in my way. Elena, Richard doesn't need a secretary. He needs someone who understands vision. And that's not you." I should have seen it coming. 3 weeks later, I was called into HR. They said there were performance concerns, missed deadlines, complaints from team members, poor communication. I almost laughed. It was a list of fabricated nonsense. I had evidence to disprove every point, but Richard didn't even give me the chance to explain. He sat there, arms crossed, watching me unravel as the HR manager slid a termination agreement across the table. "It's best if we part ways amicably," he said coldly. Just like that, 8 years of loyalty erased. No severance, no gratitude, no goodbye. I remember walking out of that building feeling like the world had ended. My coworkers avoided my eyes. Sabrina stood by Richard's door smirking. She'd won. The first few weeks were hell. I couldn't sleep. I replayed everything over and over, wondering what I did wrong. But as grief turned to anger, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. If they wanted a war, I'd give them one, but quietly, with precision. Revenge wasn't about shouting or breaking things. It was about strategy. And I knew that company better than anyone. I started gathering everything I'd ever backed up over the years. Old project files, contracts, client communications, internal audits, budgets, because Richard had trusted me completely. I had copies of nearly everything on an encrypted cloud drive I used for work continuity. I wasn't planning to use it back then, but now. It was my weapon. Then I started digging deeper. Sabrina had been hired as a consultant, not an employee, which meant she was billing the company through an outside vendor, a small marketing agency she coned. That alone raised red flags. I followed the paper trail, cross-referencing invoices against actual project work. What I found made my blood boil. Sabrina had been overbilling massively. She'd been submitting fake invoices for campaigns that didn't exist, and Richard had approved every one. Why? Because he was sleeping with her. He'd been signing off her payments to keep her happy, all while slashing bonuses for other employees due to budget constraints. I knew I had something explosive, but I needed a plan. Going public too soon would make me look bitter. I needed power. So I called in a favor from Lucas Bennett, an old college friend who worked in venture capital. I told him I had an idea for a new financial consulting startup, small, agile, and data-driven, something that could outmaneuver bloated firms like Richard's. Lucas loved the idea and agreed to help fund it. Within 6 months, my company, Crosspoint Analytics, was born. I built a small team, people I trusted from my old job who had also been mistreated or laid off under Richard's leadership. We worked out of a shared office, long nights fueled by spite and caffeine. Slowly, our client list grew. Meanwhile, Richard's firm began to stumble. Clients complained about poor deliverables, missed targets, creative mismanagement. Sabrina was now the chief marketing officer, a title she'd basically given herself after Richard promoted her. She was in over her head, and I could tell from public filings that their revenue was declining. I wasn't satisfied yet. I wanted them exposed. So I reached out to one of Richard's biggest clients, Fairmont Holdings, pretending to be a neutral consultant researching market competition. I learned they were considering switching firms due to trust issues. That was my opening. I anonymously sent Fairmont's CFOA package, detailed documents proving Sabrina's overbilling, Richard's conflict of interest, and financial discrepancies hidden in quarterly reports. The evidence was airtight. Within a week, Fairmont launched a private audit. Within a month, they dropped Richard's firm entirely and signed with mine. That was the first domino. Once Fairmont's departure hit industry news, others followed. Investors pulled back. Employees began leaving in waves. And Sabrina. She panicked. I knew because one of my old coworkers, now at my firm, forwarded me screenshots of her frantic messages begging for damage control. But it was too late. Then came the part I'd been waiting for. The SEC opened an investigation into Richard's company for fraudulent billing practices. Someone, I'll never confirm who, had anonymously submitted a detailed complaint with supporting documents. Richard was furious, scrambling to save himself. He tried to blame Sabrina, claiming she'd manipulated him. She in turn leaked emails showing he'd approved everything knowingly. They turned on each other like vultures. When the media got hold of it, it became a scandal. Headlines read, "Top finance CEO under fire for fraud and affair scandal." Overnight, their empire collapsed. Sabrina was fired, Richard resigned for personal reasons, and the company filed for restructuring within months. And me, I watched it all unfold from my corner office, a quiet smile on my lips as justice unfolded one headline at a time. But my story didn't end there. A year later, my firm had grown beyond anything I imagined. We had expanded to 3 cities, with major clients trusting us for transparency, something I made our brand's core value. I was invited to speak at a Women in Business conference. After my talk, a familiar face approached me, Richard. He looked older, tired, broken. He told me he admired what I'd built. Then he said, "You were always the real brain of the operation. I wish I'd realized it sooner." I looked at him for a long moment and said, "You did realize it. That's why you got rid of me." He didn't respond, just nodded, ashamed, and walked away. As for Sabrina, last I heard, she moved out of the city after being blacklisted from most agencies. Word spread fast in our industry. No one wanted to work with someone who'd faked invoices and tanked a company. But here's the part that surprised even me. I didn't feel triumphant anymore. I thought revenge would taste sweet, but it didn't. It was satisfying, yes, but what I really felt was peace. I had rebuilt my life, on my terms, without anyone else's permission. One evening, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, overlooking the city skyline, the same skyline I used to stare at when I was crying in my car after being fired. I thought about the old me, timid, obedient, afraid to speak up. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone unbreakable. Justice had been served not through rage, but through reinvention. When I think about everything now, I realize the real revenge wasn't destroying Richard and Sabrina. It was proving that I didn't need them to succeed. I became everything they said I couldn't be: powerful, respected, and free. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: you can't bury a woman who knows her worth. Because when she rises again, she doesn't come back to beg. She comes back to build an empire.